The end of the world. The end of the old world. I feel like everything will be revealed soon. I mean, it's happening in real time. Of course, we have held down the fort over here on the historical end, but a lot of great researchers in every field are doing great work, especially exposing the political corruption. And it doesn't matter if these political criminals get away with it or are pardoned, their likes will never be trustworthy again. Even if you're pardoned for a crime against the people, you're still a criminal, creating a BS pandemic while politicians trade stock, guaranteeing their profits. And we allow this. I follow a great teacher, and he talks about how we don't have any problems, and that's so heavy and hard to swallow when you first hear it. Right now, any of you can recall a problem, and it's always a new problem. It's always the greatest problem in your life. Greatest problem replaces the last one. Can you remember the one before this one? How about the one before that one? They were all the greatest problem in the world in your life. But his idea is that the problem is within us. And you could fight the external world, try to resolve all your problems externally, or you could solve them or eliminate them within. And that's because the only way you know that it is a problem is how you feel about it. 9 people might not think it's a problem, and 1 does. And it may or may not be, but most often we have little control of most of the problems in the world. And if we're not careful, they'll take us out from within. Unless we eliminate our problems by eliminating our negative relationship to them. So this week, we're just going to look at a bunch of stuff. I hope you're doing well. I love you all. God bless, and welcome. So here we are looking at a temple complex at Luxor in Egypt, and how fascinating. We can see 2 different types of columns here. We have this style, and then we have a robust style back here. Super industrial, overbuilt for this time period and today. And we can see how there was beautiful gardens, multi-levels, stairs going down to the water's edge. And we can see houses back here, a cathedral back here. And what was this? What is this thing? It's funny because I planned a video and wrote a bunch of notes on my whiteboard. And then I said, this is stupid. And I erased everything. And then I opened up this photo. I thought, how strange. This is exactly what I was gonna talk about. What is this? So it really started with those ruins we were looking at in my last video, the ones in China. Let's have a little look real quick, and we can see these Jia ruins. And it doesn't look like it as much on the Google Earth, but I thought to myself, what is this thing? Of course I proposed that it was a structure, a giant structure. We see a whole city up here, a long boulevard, some sort of pedestal for a monument seems to be missing. Now, of course, pretty unrecognizable, but a structure. What is a structure? So I thought about the Ark, Noah's Ark, and was it all primitive, wooden? Of course I discuss this all the time. Were the biblical characters really robe-wearing people with sandals? I mean, when we look at the ruins from the supposed time period, we see something else. We don't see the ruins of sandal wearers. Here, these are pre-biblical ruins. Pre-biblical. Here we go. I'm not sure about the Egyptians. I don't think the Egyptians were the kind of people we're led to believe they were. But it doesn't matter. We see the people after the Egyptians building the same way. Giant columns, giant buildings. I mean, even the ruins, when the ruins are so impressive that they're a tourist attraction. I mean, here we go. This building is cooked out, missing everything. No roof, just the supports, no walls. And this is that time period. This is the beginning. I mean, we can talk about Atlantis, but really when it comes to our official mainstream narrative, Egypt is the beginning of the great nations. And so I saw this thing and thought, so if it's the bones of a building or a giant ship, and what do we have right below it? We have a ship. And again, I thought it was stupid. I thought it was a stupid idea. But then this picture, was it a coincidence? Martin Liedtke has shown actual ships, really large old world ships, with old world buildings on them. So the idea was already in my head. And if such a ship had been taken apart, it might look like this. And you might say, oh, that's stupid. But it was the I Am Kairos channel that went out and took some photographs of a wrecked ship off the coast of California. And this is not it, but this is an example of a concrete ship. And it was indeed a thing for a while. I did some research earlier, and it's touted as a failed idea, but there sure were a lot of concrete ships. Like not just a few, but a lot. And you can see what I'm talking about here. So you have basically buildings on ships made of concrete. And what happens when this thing is wrecked? Like the one that I Am Kairos was showing, just sits in the water and trees begin to grow on it. And what I'm showing here are all small ones, modern ones. But again, it brings me back to the Ark and what was possible. I mean, if people in the Egyptian times were building things like this, why the hell couldn't they build a concrete ship? Why might this not be part of an old concrete ship? It's pretty convenient, actually. Just build it and sail to your location and then maybe just park it. You essentially have an island. And it's absolutely fascinating seeing these piles of intricate concrete. It brought me back to the Star Fort. Could this be something similar? Could this be a different type of ship? And the same thing, covered in buildings, just a different shape. Seems more plausible to me that this would be a ship compared to their explanation that it was some stupid defense against cannons. Impossible for the horse and wagon people to build, or even procure the building materials. It brought me back to the Tower of Babel. And as I've discussed in the past, there was much more than just one Tower of Babel. I mean, even the depictions, all of them, many of them being artistic renderings, but nonetheless what they show is dozens of similar towers all around. Look, you can see them everywhere. Ziggurat structures, a great structure, essentially building a little mountain building with roads spiraling up to the top. So I think there were many towers, probably now mountains, and how many of these are now unrecognizable? I mean, it's a mind-blowing concept. And like I said, I thought it was so strange that I hesitated to share it. But I think, if nothing else, it's just absolutely fascinating, just at face value. I mean, it's just something to put on the table. At some point, all of these ships will become islands. Brings me back to the Yonaguni ruins off the coast of Japan. And how this is all, no doubt, ancient concrete from an advanced civilization. Perfection. And usually I question whether we even built everything that we're looking at, but today I just don't know. Of course I must ask the same question. I mean, did we really have such a surplus, or is this a proof in plain sight, although I've never heard about it until recently? Could this be left over from before the reset, the most recent one? I mean, we study the architecture over and over, the impossibility of building everything with the budget, the means, in the short time frame, and it's just all junked out, just like the old rail engines and tracks abandoned, similar to all the canals. We don't do anything today. I mean, everything is so slow and sluggish and cheap, and we piss huge amounts of money away and get nothing in return. And I guess while we're at it, I'll just read you what I read earlier about the history of these abandoned concrete ships. It says the oldest known concrete boat was built by this guy. This guy doesn't even look real. Joseph Louis Lambot. There we go. Gentle as a lamb, sharp as a robot. They probably wanted to say lamb boat because that's how creative the AI is. Someone jumped in and changed it to Lambot. He's the inventor of the ferro cement boat. He studied in Paris, where his uncle, Baron Lambot, was aide to the Duke of Bourbon. Whatever. So here we have old diagrams from 1917. A concrete motorboat, just a small one. 1919, we see a concrete oil tanker. So you see in 1919, we have an oil tanker, and it's much smaller than those ruins that we were looking at. This is in Oakland, California, and I just can't imagine those other boats looking like they did in a little over 100 years. Pretty recent that they started doing this. In 1942, after the U.S. entered the WW blank, I hope we can speak freely again one day, the government contracted 24 self-propelled concrete ships. And not a bad idea. I would probably build a concrete ship as a home, and then if there was ever a flood, you could just sail away. So here the SS Palo Alto, I think is the one that I Am Kairos was sharing, launched in 1919, was purchased and turned into an amusement pier. So there we go. Again, another clue, another red flag. It broke up during a 2017 storm. Here's another one, the SS Monte Carlo. And what if a bunch of these washed up all over the place? Arcs. What if this washed up in the desert? They would say these were old Native American sites, and these were kivas for underground ceremonies and religious affairs. And back to these ruins in China. This really may be reaching again on my part. But why the hell not? Especially in times of antiquity, everything was much larger, and I think things could become so large, going so far back, that they are completely unrecognizable for what they are. Just like these ships will also be unrecognizable in good time. What will people say about these in another 100 years? I mean, really, like I said, I thought this was all stupid, but what is the difference here? From the temple in Egypt. Temple in Egypt, just some bones. Okay, maybe they landscaped around it at one point, built a city around it, but really, what is the difference with this and this? So let me know your thoughts. Have you heard of the old concrete ships before? Could they be older than we're being told? So let's go in for a part 2. Okay, so I think I talked too much in part 1, so now we'll just look at some pictures, perhaps adding to the last segment. I wasn't sure what I was going to make a video on, really, but I can always look at my bookmarks and find inspiration. Here I'm looking at the Cornell University Library digital collections, and these are the Andrew Dixon White photographic collection. Looks like the photos are from 1869 and really beautiful images, high resolution. And so this is titled Fragments of Frieze, Greek 5th century BC. So here we go again. Now we're looking at Greek concrete. We start out looking at Egyptian concrete in Luxor, looking like a ship. Then we look at concrete ship, and here we have concrete sculptures. And I don't know. I mean, I know it's concrete. I know these are cast. Come on. I know throughout my life, I was taught that everything was carved, chiseled, and I'm sure it could be carved, but not on this scale. Not every block, every sculpture. It's not conceivable carved like this. Even the ruins are exquisite. The old world going all the way back to the beginning of time, was advanced. Concrete, steel, all types of metal, gold, the finest artists. Here we are in Pompeii. Absolutely exquisite ruins. The finest. And here we have these drunk inheritors, clueless, 2,000 supposed years later, just arriving in these suits. And they don't fool me. They don't look trustworthy. And everything about this just screams gap in time. Everything about it screams reset. You don't just walk away from this. Earlier I was looking at photos and old film of the Bronx in New York. And it's the same thing there. Abandoned, a gap in time. At one point, it's a sophisticated, overly built city, beautiful, decorative in every way. And suddenly, it's abandoned. Heaps, piles, mounds of bricks. And how does that make sense? How do people believe such stories? I mean, we have ruins like this in North America, just like this. Columns and bricks that survive. Here we are in Spain, Castilla-La Mancha. Look at this place. Portada del Palacio, the door of the palace. And here, this guy. Why is this guy blurry? Really fascinating. Giant door, columns, facade probably over brick. Look at this intricacy. Clearly not carved. This is a kit. These pieces have been poured and molded off-site, making this even more impressive. It's to say somebody had to design and essentially build these pieces ahead of time. Totally mind-blowing. So I think I'm gonna leave it there. Maybe I'll throw in a bonus. But for this week, thank you for joining me. Do have a blessed day. I love you all. God bless, and I'll see you next week.